You didn't catch your soulmate, you felt it first. Don't scroll, stay right here, because this didn't happen the way movies describe it. It didn't arrive with fireworks or perfect timing, it arrived as a feeling, subtle but undeniable, a quiet shift in your chest that made you pause without knowing why. Before you ever understood who they were, before you labeled it as love or destiny, your body recognized something familiar, something old, something that felt like remembering rather than meeting. Listen to this carefully, because you didn't logic your way into this connection. You didn't plan it. You didn't chase it. It happened when you weren't even looking, when your guard was down, when your mind was busy with other things. Suddenly, there was this pull, this awareness, like someone had entered your energetic space before they entered your life, and you couldn't explain it without sounding crazy. Don't skip this part, because the first sign wasn't attraction, it was sensation. A warmth. A calm. Or maybe the opposite, a sudden nervousness you couldn't place. Your heart sped up for no reason. Your thoughts drifted toward someone you barely knew. And instead of excitement, what you felt was recognition. Stay right here, because recognition doesn't shout, it whispers. It feels like déjà vu without images. Like comfort without history. Like your soul leaning forward before your mind could catch up. You felt it in your body long before you felt it in your heart. Don't scroll, your heart needs this right now. You might remember the exact moment, or maybe it was a series of small moments stitched together. A look that lingered too long. A voice that felt grounding. A presence that made the room feel quieter even when nothing had changed. And you told yourself it was nothing. Listen closely, because you tried to rationalize it. You told yourself you were projecting. You told yourself you were lonely. You told yourself you were imagining things. But no matter how much logic you applied, the feeling stayed. Calm. Steady. Persistent. Stay with me, because soul recognition doesn't feel dramatic at first, it feels intimate. It feels like something settling into place rather than exploding into your life. That's why so many people miss it, because they're waiting for intensity, not alignment. Don't skip this, because before emotions formed, your nervous system reacted. You felt safe in ways you couldn't explain. Or unsettled in ways that made you curious. Your body paid attention before your heart dared to. Listen to this carefully, because you didn't fall for who they were yet, you fell into the feeling of them. Into their energy. Into the space they created simply by existing. And that's why it felt confusing, because nothing had happened yet, but everything had shifted. Stay right here, because this is where doubt crept in. You questioned yourself. You wondered why this person mattered so much so quickly. You wondered why their absence felt louder than others' presence. You wondered why your intuition kept circling back to them. Don't scroll, because you tried to ignore it. You stayed logical. You kept emotional distance. You reminded yourself not to read too much into it. But every time you thought you had moved past it, something pulled you back, gently but firmly. Listen closely, because this wasn't obsession. Obsession feels anxious. This felt grounded. It didn't demand attention, it invited awareness. It didn't rush you, it waited. Stay with me, because when you finally interacted more deeply, you noticed something else. Conversation flowed without effort. Silence didn't feel empty. You didn't feel the need to impress. You felt like yourself, unfiltered, unguarded, present. Don't skip this part, because that ease wasn't coincidence. It wasn't chemistry alone. It was resonance. Two energies meeting on a frequency they both recognized, even if neither of you had the language for it yet. Listen to this, because you didn't feel completed by them, you felt reflected. You felt more like yourself around them, not less. And that's how soul connections reveal themselves, not by filling a void, but by reminding you who you are. Stay right here, because this connection didn't need constant reassurance. It didn't feel like a chase. It didn't leave you questioning your worth. Even in uncertainty, there was a strange sense of trust. Don't scroll, your heart needs this right now. You noticed how your intuition sharpened around them. How you became more aware of your emotions. How things you had buried started surfacing. Not because they triggered you, but because they felt safe enough to. Listen closely, because that's what real soul connections do. They don't distract you from yourself, they bring you back to yourself. They activate growth, not escape. Stay with me, because at some point you realized you didn't choose this connection. It chose you. Not in a controlling way, but in a knowing way. Like a door opening that had always been there. Don't skip this, because timing didn't make sense. Circumstances weren't perfect. Maybe one of you wasn't ready. Maybe life was complicated. And yet, the feeling didn't disappear just because it wasn't convenient. Listen to this carefully, because soul recognition isn't about readiness, it's about awareness. It arrives when it arrives, not when it's easy. Stay right here, because you may have tried to label it too soon. You wondered if this was love, fate, attachment, fantasy. You searched for clarity in definitions, but clarity lived in the feeling, not the label. Don't scroll, because you might have noticed how even distance didn't erase it. Time passed. Silence happened. Life moved on. And still, something lingered. Not longing, but knowing. Listen closely, because that knowing didn't interfere with your life, it existed alongside it. Quiet. Steady. Patient. Stay with me, because this is where many people get confused. They think soul connections are supposed to be loud, consuming, overwhelming. But the deepest ones are often the calmest, the ones that don't demand proof. Don't skip this part, because you weren't meant to catch your soulmate like something to possess. You were meant to feel them, to recognize them, to let the connection exist without forcing it into shape. Listen to this, because sometimes soulmates don't arrive to stay forever. Sometimes they arrive to awaken something. To remind you what alignment feels like. To reset your internal compass. Stay right here, because this connection may have changed you quietly. Made you more honest. More intuitive. More self-aware. And even if the outcome wasn't what you imagined, the impact was real. Don't scroll, because you didn't imagine this. You didn't make it up. You didn't overfeel. Your soul noticed something your mind couldn't explain yet. Listen closely, because this recognition wasn't a mistake. It wasn't random. It was part of your journey, part of your unfolding, part of your remembering. Stay with me, because what you felt first was truth, not fantasy. And truth doesn't rush. It waits until you're ready to understand it. Don't skip this final thought. You didn't catch your soulmate by chasing, convincing, or holding on. You felt them first, and that feeling was the beginning of something deeper than attachment. If this resonated with you, if it felt like it put words to something you've carried quietly, take a moment to like this, share it with someone who might understand, and subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. And remember, stay till the end of this journey, because clarity always follows recognition. Don't scroll, stay right here, because after you feel something that deeply without understanding it, your world doesn't go back to normal, it quietly rearranges itself around that feeling. You may have tried to ignore it at first, telling yourself it was just a moment, just curiosity, just imagination, but something inside you kept returning to it, not obsessively, not desperately, just consistently, like a soft pulse reminding you that something meaningful had brushed past your soul. Listen to this carefully, because the confusion didn't come from intensity, it came from calm. You weren't overwhelmed, you were unsettled in a quiet way, the kind that makes you think more deeply about your own emotions. You noticed how their presence lingered even when they weren't around, how a simple memory of them could shift your mood without warning, and that's when you realized this wasn't about attraction, it was about resonance. Don't skip this part, because you tried to ground yourself in logic. You listed reasons why this shouldn't matter. Timing wasn't right. Circumstances were complicated. You barely knew each other. But logic couldn't dissolve what your body had already recognized, and every time you tried to dismiss it, the feeling returned, steady and patient. Stay right here, because patience is important. This connection didn't rush you. It didn't demand your attention or pull you into chaos. It simply existed, quietly, like a knowing that didn't need constant validation. And that's what made it so different from anything you'd felt before. Don't scroll, your heart needs this right now. You noticed how your awareness sharpened after that encounter. You became more conscious of your emotions, more aware of what felt aligned and what didn't. Old patterns started feeling uncomfortable. Situations you once tolerated suddenly felt heavy, as if your inner compass had recalibrated. Listen closely, because soul recognition doesn't just connect you to another person, it reconnects you to yourself. You began questioning things you had accepted for years. You noticed where you were settling, where you were shrinking, where you were choosing comfort over truth. And that awareness didn't come from pain, it came from clarity. Stay with me, because you may have wondered if this person felt it too. You looked for signs, subtle shifts in energy, moments of understanding that seemed to pass between you without words. And sometimes you sensed it, that shared pause, that look that lingered, that silence that felt full instead of empty. Don't skip this, because uncertainty became part of the experience. You didn't know what this connection was meant to be. You didn't know if it would grow, fade, or remain undefined. And for once, you didn't feel the urge to force answers. Something in you trusted the process, even if your mind didn't fully understand it. Listen to this carefully, because you may have noticed how this feeling didn't consume your life, it complemented it. You still lived. You still laughed. You still pursued your goals. But beneath it all, there was a quiet awareness, a subtle sense of alignment that influenced how you moved through the world. Stay right here, because you began to see how different this was from attachment. Attachment feels urgent. It creates anxiety. It demands reassurance. This didn't. This felt grounded. It didn't need constant contact to survive. Distance didn't destroy it. Silence didn't erase it. Don't scroll, because time passed, and instead of fading, the feeling matured. It softened. It became less about them and more about what it awakened in you. A desire for authenticity. A longing for depth. A refusal to settle for connections that didn't meet you fully. Listen closely, because you may have tried to replace it. You met other people. You explored other possibilities. And while those experiences had their own value, none of them touched that same place inside you. Not because they were lacking, but because that connection had activated something unique. Stay with me, because this is where acceptance begins. You stop trying to define it. You stop trying to control the outcome. You allowed it to exist without expectations, and in doing so, you freed yourself from pressure. You realize that not every meaningful connection needs a label to be valid. Don't skip this part, because you noticed how your intuition grew stronger. You trusted yourself more. You listened to your body. You paid attention to subtle emotional cues you once ignored. And that growth wasn't dependent on whether this person stayed in your life or not. Listen to this, because soul connections don't always stay physically close, but they always leave an imprint. They change how you love. How you choose. How you recognize alignment. And once that imprint exists, you can't unlearn it. Stay right here, because you may have experienced moments of longing, not for the person, but for the feeling of recognition itself. That sense of being seen without explanation. And that longing wasn't meant to pull you backward, it was meant to guide you forward. Don't scroll, your heart needs this right now. You started understanding that this connection wasn't about possession. It wasn't about exclusivity. It wasn't about outcome. It was about awakening. About remembering what true resonance feels like. Listen closely, because you may have realized that even if nothing more happened, this experience mattered. It validated your intuition. It showed you that you are capable of deep, soulful connection. And that realization alone changes how you move through future relationships. Stay with me, because there's a quiet strength that comes from this understanding. You no longer chase connections that don't meet you energetically. You no longer force bonds out of fear of being alone. You trust that what's meant to align will. Don't skip this, because sometimes the purpose of a soulmate isn't to stay forever, but to open your heart in a way that prepares you for what comes next. To raise your standards. To deepen your awareness. To reconnect you with your own truth. Listen to this carefully, because this connection didn't weaken you, it refined you. It stripped away illusions. It softened your defenses. It reminded you that love can feel calm, grounded, and expansive all at once. Stay right here, because as time goes on, you may look back and realize that moment of recognition was a turning point. Not because of what happened afterward, but because of who you became because of it. Don't scroll, because this isn't about waiting for someone to return. It's about honoring what you felt and letting it inform your future, not define it. It's about trusting that your soul knows what it's doing, even when your mind is still catching up. Listen closely, because you didn't lose anything by feeling deeply. You gained awareness. You gained clarity. You gained a deeper connection to yourself. And those gains stay with you, no matter where life leads. Stay with me, because what you felt wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a fantasy. It was a moment of alignment that arrived exactly when you were ready to recognize it. Don't skip this final reflection. You weren't meant to hold on to this connection at all costs. You were meant to be changed by it. And that change is still unfolding. If this resonated with you, if it felt like it put words to something you've carried quietly, take a moment to like this, share it with someone who might understand, and subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. And remember, stay till the end, because the journey of understanding your soul connections is only just beginning. Don't scroll, stay right here, because after acceptance settles in, something even deeper begins to unfold, and it doesn't feel dramatic, it feels revealing. You start noticing how that connection quietly reshaped you, how it altered the way you perceive energy, presence, and emotional truth. It's no longer just about what you felt for them, it's about what that feeling unlocked inside you, and once unlocked, it can't be put back. Listen to this carefully, because you begin seeing people differently now. You sense when conversations are hollow. You feel when smiles don't reach the soul. You notice when someone is present physically but absent energetically. That awareness wasn't always there, and now that it is, you can't pretend not to notice it. Your intuition has sharpened, and it's not loud, it's precise. Don't skip this part, because you may feel moments of loneliness that surprise you. Not because you're alone, but because shallow connections no longer satisfy you. Things that once distracted you now feel empty. Small talk drains you. Surface-level bonds feel heavy. And that's not sadness, that's growth creating space for something real. Stay right here, because you start understanding why that connection didn't need to last forever to be meaningful. It wasn't meant to become a story you lived in, it was meant to be a doorway you walked through. Once you crossed it, you couldn't stay the same person anymore. Don't scroll, your heart needs this right now. You may have caught yourself wondering if you'll ever feel that recognition again, and that question can feel scary. But the truth is, you're not meant to feel it the same way again, because you're not the same person who felt it the first time. You've evolved. Listen closely, because you begin to trust your inner timing more than external pressure. You're no longer rushed by loneliness or driven by fear. You're guided by alignment. You wait differently now. You choose differently now. And that patience isn't passive, it's intentional. Stay with me, because memories of that connection may still surface, not with pain, but with warmth. You don't replay them to escape the present. You remember them as markers, reminders of what resonance feels like. And instead of pulling you backward, they ground you forward. Don't skip this, because you start noticing how your boundaries strengthen naturally. You don't have to announce them. You don't have to explain them. You simply feel when something is not for you anymore, and you step away without guilt. That clarity is something you didn't have before. Listen to this carefully, because your nervous system is recalibrating. Chaos no longer feels exciting. Inconsistency no longer feels romantic. Emotional unavailability no longer feels mysterious. It feels exhausting. And that shift is profound. Stay right here, because you begin valuing presence over potential. You stop falling in love with what could be. You start paying attention to what is. And that alone protects your heart in ways nothing else can. Don't scroll, because there may be moments when you miss the person, but what you truly miss is the feeling of alignment they awakened. And now that you recognize that, you're less tempted to attach it to the wrong people. Listen closely, because you stop trying to recreate that connection. You're not searching for a replacement. You're open, but not desperate. Curious, but not attached. And that neutrality is powerful. Stay with me, because your self-trust deepens. You no longer override your instincts for convenience. You no longer explain away discomfort. When something feels off, you listen. When something feels right, you allow it to unfold naturally. Don't skip this part, because you may realize how much stronger you are now emotionally. You don't cling. You don't chase. You don't beg for clarity. You're okay with not knowing, because you trust yourself to respond when truth arrives. Listen to this, because you start recognizing soul connections don't always come with labels. Some arrive as teachers. Some as mirrors. Some as reminders. And each serves a different purpose in your journey. Stay right here, because you may feel moments of gratitude for that connection, even if it never became what you once imagined. Gratitude for the awakening. Gratitude for the clarity. Gratitude for the shift it created in you. Don't scroll, your heart needs this right now. You begin understanding that love isn't about intensity, it's about resonance. It's about feeling seen without performing. It's about being calm without feeling bored. It's about safety that doesn't silence you. Listen closely, because your future connections will feel different. They won't shake you to your core. They'll steady you. They won't confuse you. They'll feel clear. And that clarity will feel unfamiliar at first, but it will feel right. Stay with me, because you no longer question whether you're capable of deep connection. You know you are. You've felt it. And that knowing removes doubt from your heart. Don't skip this, because you stop romanticizing struggle. You stop believing love has to hurt to be meaningful. You stop associating depth with difficulty. And that belief shift changes everything. Listen to this carefully, because you're no longer afraid of missing out. You're more afraid of missing alignment. And that fear guides you toward healthier choices, not away from them. Stay right here, because silence no longer scares you. You don't need constant noise to feel connected. You're comfortable in stillness. Comfortable in your own presence. Comfortable waiting for what aligns. Don't scroll, because you may realize that this connection was the moment you learned to trust your soul over your expectations. And that lesson will serve you far beyond this chapter. Listen closely, because even if that person never returns, the awareness they triggered stays. The standard they awakened stays. The clarity they brought stays. Stay with me, because you didn't lose anything when that connection didn't turn into permanence. You gained discernment. You gained self-awareness. You gained emotional maturity. Don't skip this part, because now you know the difference between attachment and alignment. Attachment pulls. Alignment flows. And you choose flow now. Listen to this, because your heart is quieter, but stronger. Softer, but wiser. Open, but protected by clarity. Stay right here, because this is what integration looks like. Not forgetting. Not clinging. Just understanding. Don't scroll, because what you felt wasn't meant to trap you in longing. It was meant to elevate your perception of love. Listen closely, because from this point forward, you won't settle for connections that don't meet you at the soul level. Stay with me, because you're no longer chasing soulmates. You're becoming aligned enough to recognize them. Don't skip this final truth. That feeling you had didn't disappear. It transformed into wisdom. If this resonated with you, if it felt like it spoke to a quiet part of your journey, take a moment to like this, share it with someone who might understand, and subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. And remember, stay till the end, because every soul lesson leads you closer to alignment. Don't scroll, stay right here, because now something even quieter happens, something most people miss if they're not paying attention. After awareness settles and integration begins, life starts testing what you've learned, not with drama, but with subtle choices. You're placed back into ordinary moments, ordinary interactions, ordinary connections, and you're asked one simple question again and again without words: did you really change, or did you just understand? Listen to this carefully, because the way you move through the world feels different now. You notice pauses where you once rushed. You feel hesitation where you once forced certainty. And instead of panicking about those pauses, you respect them. You've learned that alignment doesn't hurry, and what's meant for you doesn't need to be chased. Don't skip this part, because new people may enter your life now, and at first they seem fine, kind, attractive, interesting. But something inside you stays neutral. You don't rush to label. You don't project a future. You observe. And this time, observation doesn't feel cold, it feels wise. Stay right here, because your body has become your guide. You feel expansion or contraction almost instantly. Conversations either energize you or quietly drain you. You no longer ignore these signals. You no longer override them out of politeness or fear of missing out. Don't scroll, your heart needs this right now. You may notice how easily you walk away from things that once would have pulled you in. Inconsistency doesn't intrigue you. Emotional distance doesn't challenge you. Ambiguity doesn't excite you. It simply tells you everything you need to know. Listen closely, because this is the moment your standards become embodied, not spoken. You don't announce boundaries. You live them. You don't demand clarity. You respond to what's shown. And that calm decisiveness is something you've never carried before. Stay with me, because there may be moments when the past tries to echo. Old feelings resurface. Old memories knock softly. But instead of pulling you backward, they remind you how far you've come. You feel gratitude instead of longing. Understanding instead of confusion. Don't skip this, because your emotional reactions are different now. You don't spiral when someone pulls away. You don't personalize silence. You don't chase reassurance. You pause, you feel, and you choose yourself without turning it into a battle. Listen to this carefully, because peace now feels deeper than excitement ever did. You crave emotional safety that doesn't require performance. You desire connection that feels steady, not stimulating in a chaotic way. And this preference isn't boring, it's evolved. Stay right here, because you may notice how much more present you are with yourself. You enjoy your own company more. You sit in stillness without reaching for distraction. You trust quiet moments. And that self-connection becomes the foundation for every future bond. Don't scroll, because your intuition no longer whispers, it speaks clearly. You know when to lean in. You know when to step back. You know when something has potential and when it only has familiarity. And you no longer confuse the two. Listen closely, because relationships now mirror your inner state. When you're grounded, you attract grounded energy. When you're clear, confusion has nowhere to attach. And this isn't magic, it's alignment. Stay with me, because you may notice fewer people staying in your life, but those who do feel more real. Conversations feel intentional. Presence feels mutual. You don't feel like you're carrying the emotional weight alone anymore. Don't skip this part, because your patience is different now. It's not rooted in waiting for someone to change. It's rooted in trusting that what's meant for you will meet you where you are. You wait without attachment. You wait without tension. Listen to this, because you begin understanding that love doesn't need to convince you of itself. It doesn't need constant reassurance. It doesn't need grand gestures to feel real. It feels steady even on ordinary days. Stay right here, because you stop asking why certain connections didn't work out. You see now that they served their purpose. They taught you discernment. They refined your emotional language. They brought you back to yourself. Don't scroll, your heart needs this right now. You may notice that when someone truly aligned appears, your body doesn't tense. Your mind doesn't race. Your heart doesn't question. It simply opens calmly, naturally, without fear. Listen closely, because this calm might confuse you at first. You might wonder if something is missing. But nothing is missing. What's missing is the chaos you once mistook for chemistry. Stay with me, because you now understand that soul connections don't disrupt your life, they integrate into it. They don't demand your energy, they respect it. They don't rush your healing, they honor it. Don't skip this, because you've learned to recognize effort that feels mutual. You no longer overextend to prove worth. You allow reciprocity to reveal itself naturally. And if it doesn't, you step away without resentment. Listen to this carefully, because you've stopped seeking validation through connection. You don't need to be chosen to feel worthy. You don't need attention to feel seen. You carry that sense of worth internally now. Stay right here, because even conflict feels different when alignment exists. It doesn't threaten the bond. It strengthens understanding. And if someone can't meet you there, you no longer take it personally. Don't scroll, because your emotional resilience has deepened. You feel things fully, but they don't consume you. You allow sadness without drowning. You allow joy without clinging. You move through emotions instead of getting stuck in them. Listen closely, because this is what maturity feels like. Not hardness. Not detachment. But grounded openness. A heart that is available without being unprotected. Stay with me, because you may realize you're no longer afraid of endings. You trust yourself to survive them. You trust yourself to choose again. And that trust removes desperation from love. Don't skip this part, because your life feels quieter now, but fuller. Less dramatic, but more meaningful. Less crowded, but more intentional. And that balance is something you once thought you'd never find. Listen to this, because you're no longer chasing soulmates. You're living in alignment, and alignment attracts what resonates without effort. Stay right here, because this stage isn't flashy. It doesn't announce itself. It simply feels right. And that rightness becomes your compass. Don't scroll, because the journey hasn't ended, it's matured. What you felt once as recognition has become wisdom. What you once questioned has become clarity. Listen closely, because you're not waiting for love anymore. You're ready for it, without urgency, without fear, without illusion. Stay with me, because this is the quiet strength that comes after awakening. And it's the foundation for everything that comes next. If this resonated with you, if you felt the calm recognition in these words, take a moment to like this, share it with someone who might need it, and subscribe so you don't miss what's coming. And remember, stay till the end, because alignment always rewards patience. Don't scroll, stay right here, because this is where the shift becomes undeniable, even if nothing dramatic happens on the outside. This is the stage where your inner world has changed so much that your outer life can no longer stay the same, and you may feel slightly disoriented, like you're standing between who you were and who you're becoming. It's quiet, but it's powerful. Listen to this carefully, because you start noticing how situations that once pulled you in emotionally now barely touch you. Not because you've gone cold, but because you've gone clear. You see patterns early. You sense misalignment before it grows roots. And instead of doubting yourself, you trust what you feel. Don't skip this part, because this is where self-respect stops being a concept and starts being a behavior. You don't argue your worth anymore. You don't negotiate your needs. You don't wait for someone to meet you halfway while you stand still. You move forward when alignment is there, and you pause when it isn't. Stay right here, because something surprising happens now. You begin attracting people who reflect your inner stability. They don't rush you. They don't confuse you. They don't leave you guessing where you stand. And even if they're not meant to stay forever, their presence feels honest. Don't scroll, your heart needs this right now. You may also notice how some people drift away naturally. There's no big fallout, no dramatic ending. The connection just loses momentum. And instead of panicking or chasing closure, you let it happen. You understand now that not everything is meant to be held on to. Listen closely, because you've stopped romanticizing potential. You no longer fall in love with who someone could become. You pay attention to who they are, consistently, when no one is watching. And that discernment protects your energy more than any boundary ever could. Stay with me, because you might feel moments of deep calm that feel unfamiliar. Your nervous system isn't constantly activated anymore. You're not scanning for signs. You're not reading between lines. You're present in your body, and that presence feels grounding. Don't skip this, because clarity changes how you experience attraction. You still feel drawn to people, but it's softer, slower, more intentional. It doesn't hijack your emotions. It doesn't cloud your judgment. It invites curiosity without attachment. Listen to this carefully, because you've learned to sit with uncertainty without filling it with fear. You don't need immediate answers to feel secure. You trust that clarity will arrive through behavior, not promises. And if it doesn't, you walk away peacefully. Stay right here, because this is where emotional independence blossoms. You enjoy connection, but you don't rely on it to feel whole. You share your life without handing it over. You love without losing yourself. Don't scroll, because your inner dialogue has changed. You no longer ask, "Why wasn't I enough?" You ask, "Was this aligned?" And that shift removes shame from your experiences and replaces it with wisdom. Listen closely, because you've stopped trying to be understood by everyone. You express yourself honestly and allow people to respond however they choose. You no longer shape your truth to keep others comfortable. Stay with me, because your intuition has become a trusted companion. You don't second-guess it. You don't override it. You act on it quietly, confidently, without needing validation. Don't skip this part, because you may notice how your standards feel higher, but not rigid. You're open, but selective. Soft, but grounded. And this balance allows genuine connection to find you without effort. Listen to this, because you've also made peace with the idea that some connections are meant to pass through your life, not define it. They leave marks, not chains. Lessons, not wounds. Stay right here, because you now understand that depth doesn't require suffering. You no longer equate love with struggle. You no longer believe that intensity equals intimacy. You choose calm that feels alive, not numb. Don't scroll, your heart needs this right now. You might notice that your reactions to rejection have changed. It still stings, but it doesn't break you. You don't spiral. You don't internalize it. You see it as information, not a verdict on your worth. Listen closely, because this is where self-trust becomes unshakable. You trust yourself to walk away. You trust yourself to stay. You trust yourself to choose again if something ends. That trust dissolves fear. Stay with me, because you may find yourself enjoying solitude more deeply now. Not as avoidance, but as nourishment. You recharge in your own presence. You reflect without judgment. You listen inwardly. Don't skip this, because when loneliness appears, you don't panic. You sit with it. You understand it's a signal, not an emergency. And you don't rush to fill it with the wrong energy. Listen to this carefully, because you've stopped chasing closure. You no longer need explanations from people who couldn't meet you. You give yourself closure through understanding and compassion. Stay right here, because you may notice how life feels slower, but richer. You savor conversations. You appreciate small moments. You feel grounded in your body instead of living in your head. Don't scroll, because your emotional resilience has strengthened. You feel deeply, but you recover quickly. You allow emotions to pass through without clinging to them. Listen closely, because you've become more honest about what you want. Not what you think you should want, but what actually nourishes you. And that honesty shapes your choices. Stay with me, because you're no longer afraid of missing out on people. You're more concerned with missing out on alignment. And that priority changes everything. Don't skip this part, because you may recognize that love now feels expansive, not consuming. It supports your life instead of overtaking it. It adds to you instead of asking you to disappear. Listen to this, because you've learned to let things unfold without controlling the outcome. You show up authentically and allow life to respond. You trust the process. Stay right here, because you're no longer living from old wounds. You've integrated their lessons. You move forward with awareness, not defense. Don't scroll, your heart needs this right now. You may feel gratitude for past connections, even the painful ones. They brought you here. They shaped your discernment. They refined your heart. Listen closely, because this stage is about embodiment. You're not just understanding these truths intellectually. You're living them. And that embodiment is what attracts aligned experiences. Stay with me, because you're no longer seeking someone to complete you. You're complete, and you're inviting someone to walk alongside you, if alignment exists. Don't skip this final reflection. You've reached a place where love is no longer something you chase or fear. It's something you recognize, allow, and receive when it's real. And this is not the end of the journey. This is the strength you carry forward, quietly, confidently, into whatever comes next.